Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of the Environmental Finance Center Network, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, EPA Tools for Small Public Water System Operators, Electronic Preventative Maintenance Logs. My name is Tess Clark. I work here at the Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center. Before we get started with our program, I'm going to quickly go over some logistics and just talk briefly about our Environmental Finance Center Network and our Smart Management for Small Water Systems project. Okay, I'm happy to report that we have a very diverse audience for today's webinar. You can see that we have attendees from, across the United States joining us, and even some folks in Canada and a little international. It's pretty impressive turnout. We have about 400 people registered today. All right, I know many of you are interested in receiving certificates of attendance. For this webinar, certificates of attendance will be provided by the American Water Works Association. For attendees who have an AWWA customer record, your certificate will be uploaded within 30 days. For attendees who do not have an AWWA customer record, you will receive an email from AWWA requesting that you create one by a specific date to receive your certificate. If you don't create the record, you will not receive a certificate. In order to get credit, such as a CEU, you need to check with your licensing agency directly. It's your responsibility to make sure that this webinar meets your agency's rules and criteria for credit. Okay, this session is one of several webinars conducted by the Environmental Finance Center Network. The EFCN provides training and technical assistance to small public water systems in all 50 states and 5 territories to help local water systems achieve and maintain compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act. You can just take a look at our small systems team. Our network extends across the U.S. We have partners based in all major U.S. regions. And here you can get a sense of our areas of expertise that we focus on. Primarily workshops, trainings, and direct technical assistance are provided on the variety of topics here. So asset management, rate setting and fiscal planning, water loss reduction, resiliency planning, and many more. The EFCN also has a small systems blog. You can learn more about water finance and management through this blog. Blog posts feature lessons learned from our trainings and technical assistance, descriptions of available tools, and also success stories. And we will give you the opportunity to subscribe to that blog at the end of the webinar. In addition to the workshops, direct technical assistance, and our webinars, as part of the Smart Management for Small Water Systems project, we have created a table that lists the major funding sources for drinking water infrastructure projects for each state and territory. So here's how you would access those tables. On the EFCN homepage, you go to the Resources tab, and then you click on Funding Sources by State. This will take you to a map of the country, as you can see here. And if you just click the state that you're interested in, you will find a PDF of all the relevant funding sources for drinking water for that state. The table looks like the image on the left side of the slide. And for each funding program, it's going to include the name and a short description and some contact information for someone who works there. Before I turn the presentation over to our experts today, I just have 2 quick polling questions for you. The first is, what kind of water utility do you represent? So go ahead and respond to the best of your ability. You have several options listed: for-profit, local government, not-for-profit, other water utility, and some of you may not be from a water system, so go ahead and select the most appropriate response. Okay, I'm just going to give you a couple more seconds here. Looks like almost everybody's voted. Okay. All right. And quickly, it looks like we have a pretty strong response from our local government or municipal and county folks, 38%. We also have some not-for-profit cooperatives, 14%. We do have utilities represented, 17%, and some for-profits. And then it looks like 30% of you are not from water systems. Okay. All right, and secondly, I just am going to give you one more poll here. What size? What size water and or sewer system does your utility operate by number of people served? So go ahead and pick the response here that best represents your system: very small, small, medium, large or very large, or not a water system. Okay, I'm just going to give you a couple more seconds. It looks like almost everyone has voted. Okay, great. All right, great. So it looks like we have quite a few people from small systems. That's great to see. 23% are serving 501 to 3,300 people. 17% are very small, less than 500 people served. A fair amount of medium and just a couple of very large or very large systems. And then again, we're seeing that a couple of you are not from water systems, 25%. Okay. All right, at this point, I'm going to be turning the presentation over to our presenters, Don Nall and James Markham, who will be discussing EPA tools for small systems operators. Don Nall is Program Manager at Southwest Environmental Finance Center. James is also joining us from Southwest DFC as a research scientist. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead, and Don will be starting the presentation today.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
All right, give me just a second here. Okay, we should be ready to go. And we wanted to start before we present the tool by kind of getting to know a little bit about our audience and some questions about how you currently do preventative maintenance. So if we can do those first couple of poll questions now, that would be great.
Great. So I'm launching the first poll. That is, what is your system source? So just select the answer that makes the most sense for you. Your options are groundwater, surface water, a combination of ground and surface water, another system provides treated water, or another system provides untreated water. And that's just pertaining to those of you who are already water systems in this case. Okay, it looks like we are still waiting for a few more people to vote here. All right, looks like we have just about everybody. So I'm going to close this poll and share the results. Wow, so overwhelmingly we have a lot of groundwater sources. Also 19% is a combination of ground and surface water, and then 14% is just surface water. And then in the minority, we have another system providing treated water and another system providing untreated water. Okay. And our second poll question that we're going to be doing at this time is, does your system have a formal, documented preventive maintenance plan? So go ahead and respond to the best of your ability. No, yes, or not a water system. Okay, it looks like almost everyone here has started to, waiting for a couple more folks to respond. Okay, that looks like just about everybody. Great, so here we're seeing that 47% of water systems here today do not have a maintenance plan, and 31% do. 22% today are not water systems.
All right, great. All right, so thank you for taking the time to answer our poll questions. We just wanted to kind of let you know a little bit about who we are. James and I are with the Southwest Environmental Finance Center. As mentioned earlier, there are multiple EFCs across the country. So we are housed in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And we are going to dive right into the content now. So when you think about your utility, do you think about how you are a customer service organization? Because all utilities are customer service organizations. And because we have those competing priorities. Those priorities that compete most often are the desire to have higher levels of service, but also to have lower costs. And the two of these tend to not work together all that well. So there's a need for our customers to have a better understanding about what the true relationship between level of service and cost are. Of course, typically the higher level of service, the higher the cost. But that's not always the way that things are perceived. So there is a great need for us to communicate that well with our customers and to have our customers understand what they're paying for and what you're capable of providing. And all of that can be done through an asset management type program. That's a tool that can help you overcome some of those issues. But when that discussion hasn't taken place and our decision makers don't have a choice sometimes, O&M budgets are oftentimes the first thing to get cut. And that's a decision that only focuses on the immediate need to reduce cost. It doesn't take a look at the long-term cost. We know that cutting the maintenance budget really is the more expensive option in the long run because you end up replacing equipment sooner and you end up replacing in an unplanned manner. And oftentimes this unplanned maintenance and replacement, or otherwise called reactive maintenance, makes your job a lot harder and a lot more expensive. So how does maintenance actually help? Well, when we look at water utilities across the country, even the smallest or the simplest water systems really aren't simple at all. They're fairly complex with many different kinds of assets. As you can see here, a large number of assets. You probably have hundreds of meters, thousands of meters. The same for valves, hydrants. So large numbers of assets to maintain, to keep performing, to keep providing safe drinking water. And you have the personnel that has to work to deliver that safe drinking water. So your personnel is probably much more limited than the number of assets that you own. Maintenance will help extend the life of those assets. So why is O&M valuable? Well, if an airplane was maintained the way that you maintain your water utility, would you fly in it? Typically when I ask this question, I get a pretty good chuckle from the crowd, and then a lot of head shaking. Nope, wouldn't fly on that plane. Well, why? Why wouldn't you fly on a plane that was maintained the way you maintain your system? Well, typically we know that we aren't doing the maintenance that we would like to be doing. Well, why not? Money. Money is limited. But isn't drinking water safety important? Of course it is. So what if we can show value to doing maintenance over time instead of cutting that maintenance budget and putting things off? So this shows how an asset might perform over time. Typically the asset's going to perform at an acceptable level for a fair amount of time with the condition slowly changing, and then at some point that asset condition begins to change more rapidly. When you get to that point of reaching the minimum acceptable level of service, you have to make a decision about what to do, about to repair it, replace it, or rehabilitate it. If you don't, and you continue to let that asset run, it will ultimately run to failure. What if instead you had the chance to intervene at some point before the asset hits that minimum acceptable service level? Then you can change that curve and you can improve the condition of that asset again. This will extend the asset's useful life in a manner that is planned, and it potentially allows for further intervention down the line. You may not want to do this for every asset in your system. You may not want to do maintenance to everything. You may want to let some assets run to failure. But the assets that are in your system that are critical, that have a high dollar value, you definitely want to have planned maintenance and possibly planned rehabilitation for those assets to extend their life and to get the maximum value out of those assets. So what we've been talking about are two basic modes of of maintenance. First, we have the proactive, and then we have the reactive. And of course, we're often working in this reactive mode of fixing it only after it breaks. We tend to operate this way often and repair or replace only after the asset breaks. So if we go back to that plane metaphor, airlines aren't allowed to operate this way, or we would see airplanes falling out of the sky. So when you think about it, water utilities really are the guardians of public health. They're what makes our modern civilization possible, what makes industry possible, what makes population growth possible, all of those things. Because we don't have to deal with the issues of waterborne diseases like we used to. So it is really important to think about the role that your utility plays in your society, and if continuing to operate in this reactive mode really is the right option, or if indeed we should be doing this proactive, where we work in doing maintenance to keep those assets from breaking. So that's what we're really here to talk about today, is focusing on this proactive maintenance, because reactive maintenance is always, or is almost always, I should say, more expensive than proactive work. It can be very inefficient. It can be very unplanned. It puts you behind that 8 ball. It can be more complex. It can require overtime. You might not have the spare parts on hand that you need. So getting the thing fixed in a timely fashion can be problematic. So we want to be more proactive than reactive. So when we focus on this proactive side of things, there are 3 different types of kind of typical proactive maintenance. We have routine maintenance, we have preventive maintenance, and we have predictive maintenance. And if you add all of those together, you're definitely going to get savings at your utility. So why would you want to ensure that you're doing these things? Well, according to a case study by the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy, practicing periodic component replacement in the form of preventive maintenance saves an estimated 12 to 18% over reactive maintenance. And I would say that that number could be fairly conservative for water utilities where a lot of our assets are buried. So getting to them to work on them can be more difficult than walking into a building and working on an asset. So today we're going to focus primarily on those first 2, the routine and the preventative maintenance, with the tool that we're demonstrating and how they can help you with O&M planning and scheduling. When we look at preventative maintenance, it's not a new concept. It is standard practice across almost all industries, especially if you rely on machinery to create a product. It's definitely a core component of lean manufacturing. So here you can see that according to a case study by the Office of Energy Efficiency, I said that a while ago, sorry, that there's 12 to 18% savings by doing the maintenance. So you want to make sure that you're making this transition to preventative maintenance. Another study showed that whenever people were surveyed about maintenance and they were asked if it's important to be doing maintenance, overwhelmingly 91% of the respondents agreed that active management is an important variable when it comes to efficient operation. So it's not that we don't know that we should be doing maintenance, it's that we struggle with proving value. So these statistics show that there is definitely cost savings in doing maintenance. And if you add that 3rd type of maintenance, predictive maintenance, the savings can further increase. Condition monitoring can decrease your motor operations and maintenance expenses by up to 25%. So it's definitely a valuable effort to start with some preventative maintenance and work your way into some predictive maintenance. We want to make sure that we are looking at our benchmarks and our key performance indicators, and that we refer that we know that when we're talking about them in asset management terminology, we are thinking about level of service. You want to be able to identify those key performance indicators. You want to be able to benchmark them and monitor them and then analyze that data. But to be able to do any of that, you have to have one thing, and that one thing is data. You need data, and the best way to start getting that data is by implementing a preventive maintenance program so that you can start tracking information about your system. So just a couple of thoughts. If you don't manage your assets, they will manage you. And for the majority of our utilities that we pulled this morning, you're being managed by your assets. And that's really a kind of difficult work environment to be in and day out. You're constantly waiting for the next thing to break instead of planning your day in advance and knowing what you're working on. Another quote that kind of sums it up nicely is that even if you pride yourself on kind of how quickly you can make repairs, and you're reactively repairing those things that could have been dealt with through proactive maintenance, you're basically rewarding failure. So if you think about, yeah, it doesn't take us long, we're really good at getting out there and getting it fixed. Is that really acceptable? Because you're letting it break. You're letting something fail before you pay any attention to it. So just another way to kind of think about how we go about our business. So we know that maintenance is beneficial, it's cost effective, but this probably leads you to a couple of more questions. What should I do? And when should I do it? So these can be pretty difficult questions to answer. If you don't already have an established plan, you don't have a good guidance document, or the person that used to maintain the system is retiring or has already retired and all of that maintenance information left with him or her, it can be tough. So what we want to talk to you about today is a way to address those questions. So James is going to show you a tool to help you get started. So if you'll bear with us for just a second, James is going to take over.
All right, so the good news is you do not have to remake the wheel if you're just getting started with this. Some of you may be familiar with the EPA's black box card file. This was essentially sort of a low-tech recipe box list of daily, weekly, monthly, annual tasks. This was developed back in 2004. There's actually two versions. There's one that's tribal system specific, but they're essentially the same. And the idea was to lay out sort of the typical tasks that a small groundwater systems would do and give them a place to record that information. The tool that we're talking about today is sort of the next iteration of that card file, which is an electronic version of this. We've basically updated the black box into an interactive PDF format. This can be used in a digital manner on a tablet or a PC, for example, or a laptop. The other option you have is to just simply print it out and use it in an analog form. One of the issues with the black box card file was that the cards are very, very small and there's not a lot of places to put information. So one of the things that we did is redesign it so that it's a larger format. It's printed, it's a little bit easier to use, it's designed to fit in a standard 3-ring binder, and it's broken down into an introduction, a guidebook, and then separate monthly files that contain the typical predictive maintenance duties for that month. And then there's a few ongoing extra logs for customer service complaints, valve exercising, and similar tasks that we'll show you in a little bit. This is designed to basically help small systems plan and record typical preventive maintenance activities and to create a permanent print or digital record of these. It looked like about half of the systems that are sitting in today don't have anything yet, so this is kind of a good starting point. The documents themselves are designed for small groundwater systems with up to 6 wells and well pumps, 4 storage tanks or pressure tanks, 4 chemical feed pumps, 4 booster pumps, and there are a few other criteria. But it could also be used by a surface water program as part of a preventive maintenance program as well. The document characteristics, as I said, it's a set of interactive PDFs. They list the typical recommended daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, biannual, and annual preventative O&M tasks, and they permit ongoing data entry. They use a combination of checkboxes where you can check off simply that a task has been done and initial it. There are value boxes, and there's also rooms for notes and additions of tasks that are not listed. It includes a simple conversion calculator, and it does some but not all of the calculations, which you'll see as we demonstrate this a little bit further on. Each of the documents has a hyperlinked table of contents and makes extensive use of Adobe Acrobat's bookmark tool, which I'll be demonstrating here shortly, that makes it really easy to navigate in and around the document if you are using it in its electronic format. Now, I gave you some system characteristics earlier. The pages were capped at specific numbers to limit the file size, but if you have more sources or equipment pieces than this format is designed for, we can potentially help. You'll see our contact information at the end. We can walk you through some options, and we could potentially assist you with creating a customized solution for your system. Basic software requirements, it's a PDF. All you need is the free Adobe Acrobat Reader, which you can download from a lot of different places. Just search for Acrobat Reader. Do not use another PDF reading system. I'm, for example, sitting on a Mac. It has Apple Preview. If I use that, I can open up the pages and look at them, but the formatting is off, and some of the formulas will not work. So it's designed for Acrobat. Acrobat is free. If you want to use this, we highly recommend you use Acrobat for that. Now, it is an interactive document. It is editable. But to do that, you would need the full version of Adobe Acrobat software, and I would suggest that you not try that unless you have a lot of experience with editing complicated PDF files. If you do have that experience, feel free to go for it, or obviously you can contact us and we can give you some help. So where do I get this wonderful document? It is on the EPA's website. The URL is there, and it will be in the files that you will be able to pull down from at the end of the webinar here. There are three places you can essentially go. You can get the entire package at this link here, which basically will download a zip file with all of the bits and pieces. You can download individual log files at this link, and you can actually still get the old preventive maintenance card file pages here. So if you're using that and it works for you, more power to you. That's where those are located. They were hard to find for a while. If you go to the individual download file page, you will see a list that looks like this, and it basically has a file for each of the tasks, gives you the approximate size and how many pages there are. I recommend, however, that the first time you download this information and review it, you just go ahead and download the entire package. It's the simplest way. That way you won't miss anything, and it's got some extra pieces. So if you click on that link and download it, you will get a file that should show up at the bottom of your browser, or depending on which browser you're using, may end up in your downloads folder. It's called EPA OM fileset.zip. You will have to unpack that, and Windows 10 has a standard unpacking software built into it. There are other free versions of zip software that you can use. So if you go there, click on your file set, right click and hit extract all, which is right there. It will pop out an extracted version of this file set, which is also called EPA OM file set, and nested in that is the actual file set folder, which is the exact same name, just in capital letters. If you look in there, you'll see essentially a duplicate of what we saw on the individual page download page. It's got the individual monthly files. It's got a set of guidebooks, introductions, and some ongoing logs, and a README file, which contains a very short synopsis of what we're covering today and has some of the basics in there. I suggest you take a look at it before you start working with the other files. As far as actually working with the file set, I highly recommend you, first thing you do, make a copy of it and append the year to it. That way you will have a working copy that you can use as a basis for upcoming years, and you have a file set that you can work on now. You can see I've done that here. I just appended 2018 to the end of it. I kind of went a little overboard in my sample here and actually appended the year to the individual files. You might want to do that if you think you may be passing files around between people, particularly if you use this for a couple of years. You will want to be able to distinguish November 2017 from 2018 or 19. There are also a set of ongoing logs here. Basically, you can open these up. And again, as I said, you don't actually have to use them in their digital format. You can use them in their analog format as well. It works just as well. These are formatted for 8.5 by 11 pages, but if you want to get sort of the full benefit out of this, you really need to use the Adobe version of it. And I'm sure most of you are probably familiar with Adobe, but I want to point out a couple of things just in case you don't work with it very frequently. If you open up the document, you will get a screen that looks something like this. This is the most current version of Adobe Reader. Now, on the left-hand side, you'll see a little triangle there. That, if you click on it, will open up a navigation pane that has 4 icons. We're really only concerned with the top 2 right now. You can see that there. If you click on the top icon that looks like a couple of pages up there, you will get an additional menu that shows you page thumbnails. This is useful if you kind of know what the page you're looking for looks like, but the more important piece is the next icon down, the little ribbon. That is the bookmark function. Oh, I just skipped something. You can use a little X there to close the menu down if you want. Here I've clicked on the ribbon icon, and this has brought up the bookmark table of contents that you would use to navigate back and forth. My sample document here happens to be the January O&M list. If I were to click on the table of contents in this menu over here, I will get to the table of contents page, and you'll see if you look at the listings on the right, they mirror what's there on the left. This page, table of contents page, is hyperlinked itself, but when you're within the document and you want to navigate around, you would probably use the bookmarks on the side. And again, you can use this little button here to close the menu down if you don't need it right away, or you can use this X up here to close the entire thing. So they mirror each other. So we're going to do a quick little document demo here. I'm just going to show you some of these, so bear with me while I switch screens. I've got some of these files up, and I'm just going to give you a few highlights. Okay, Acrobat Reader. So the first file to look at is the introduction. It's basically, and this is a live version, so you'll see me navigating around here. It's basically got a place to put system information, contact information, and some references. Important pieces to know: system information. This is where you would fill in, your water system name, and so on. Go ahead and save often. And the next tab I think is also very, very important. It's your emergency contact information. So I've put some information in here, but you want to have all these numbers listed ahead of time so that you're not looking around for the fire department or the hospital after an incident has taken place. This also contains a lot of useful contact information. There's EPA, regional, state, and primary agency contact information. There's information for the various technical assistance centers around the country and all of the members of the EFC network as well. I've also included in here the simple calculator, so you can see this is essentially an interactive calculator. If you type information into the blue box, you'll get the corresponding conversion in the right-hand column. It also has a list of commonly used formulas at the end. The next document I want to show you is the guidebook. This is basically the book that lists all of the things that, all of the tasks that are in the various monthly components and tells you why you're doing them. It also gives some basic information on how the files can be used, has guidance notes. These are very useful. And then has specific guidance notes for the specific tasks. This is obviously something you would only have to make one copy of or print out once, but it's a useful thing to have to refer back to if you're looking at the monthly file tasks and you're not entirely sure what to do or why you're doing one of the specific tasks. So I'm going to move on now to a sample file. This is January 2018, and just kind of walk through and highlight some of the pieces and show you some of the things that you can do. Again, we've got bookmarked table of contents. We've added those conversion factors and commonly used formulas to the beginning of this. And this is really set up to sort of list daily activities, and then it moves on to weekly and monthly activities. So the first thing here is essentially a list of recommended duties. This is essentially a checklist you can use to just verify that you have all of the things, all the tasks that you want to have accomplished listed. So in this example, for example, I've unchecked the fluoride concentration because maybe fluoride isn't an issue with the particular system that I'm looking at. We've got individual logs for a lot of different tasks. So this, for example, is one of the well logs. There are actually 6 of them. If you only have 1 or 2 wells, you obviously don't have to use the other ones, but you can use these links here to navigate back and forth between the different wells. What this will do and what it won't do. So I've got a prior monthly meter reading listed up there. I've got individual meter readings listed here. It will not calculate the amount of water used on a daily basis, but what it does do is keep track of a running total down at the bottom. And the reason we did it this way is that a lot of systems just don't actually log their production on a daily basis, and it made the math and the programming a little more difficult than it needed to be. So as a compromise, we let you do the sort of daily math, and it will keep track of the running math. There's also a place here for you to put notes if you want to. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to skip some of these. I'm going to show you some. So for example, daily storage tank levels. You've got a place to put what your normal operating high and low levels are, places to record system pressure or water level, actions taken that are necessary or not. There's a chemical feed pumps logs. So this example, for example, I've got a solution that's 1.05 grams per liter or 1,050 milligrams per liter of some chemical, 4.5 liters of solution pumped to treat a volume of 10,000 liters, which gives me a calculated dosage of 4.75. It's some basic simple math. Over here you can put in what your expected dosage is and sort of have that as a way of comparing things. Moving on to the weekly tasks, these are more in sort of a checkbox format. The idea that these are things that you don't necessarily have to document in detail, but you do want to keep track of whether they've actually been done or not. So for example here, ensuring all the fire hydrants are accessible. These are basically just a matter of clicking these buttons here to show you that the task has been done, and then you can put in notes here on the the right-hand side. There's also room for you to add additional tasks. If there are additional things that you and your particular system would like to have checked on a weekly basis. And so you can add those in, save the document, they'll be there for you for future use. On the monthly side of things, we have a bunch of recommended tasks as well. Again, these are basically sort of checklist kind of situations where you mark off that it's been done, put in the date, and any useful comments. But you'll notice those first 3 tasks there point you to the ongoing log files, because you obviously want to make sure that you did record your electricity use, but you obviously also want to record what those values were, and we'll show you those in just a second. Each of the monthly files is broken up to have sort of the typical recommended monthly duties and then additional duties that are typically done in that month. So for example, the January monthly specific tasks has overhauling your chemical feed pumps listed in it as an extra task, inspecting storage tanks for sanitary deficiencies, making sure fire hydrants are accessible. And obviously we've left a lot of space here for you to move additional tasks around. Different tasks may occur at different times depending on where you are in the country and what your weather is like. But basically the idea here is that all of those monthly, quarterly, biannual, and annual tasks have been folded into this monthly O&M section so that you do them in the appropriate month, and many of them have additional reminders in ongoing months. So for example, getting your system ready for winter. The first one notice, I believe shows up in October or September, and then in following months there's an additional reminder to verify that you actually did those tasks. So that's sort of the basic layout and the format of the monthly files. So here's the, now I'm going to move on to the ongoing logs, and as Don was talking about, sort of having data to do analysis, these will help you. This has your water quality, your electricity use, well pumping levels, repair logs, valve exercising, and customer service and training logs all kind of folded into one location. So for water quality sampling, it's very simple. It's just a, did you take your samples? Put some notes in the end. We've provided space for 6 different sampling locations. Same thing with the electrical meter readings. Some systems, particularly groundwater systems, are often very sort of energy dependent, use a lot of energy for pumping, particularly if your tank is way up on a hill. So this is a place where you can log your electric meter readings, compare that to your monthly water production, and sort of verify that things are consistent and are tracking the way you would expect them to. Particularly here in the Southwest, we have some often drastic changes in well levels. These next set of logs give you a place to check your static and pumping levels in up to 6 wells. A lot of systems don't necessarily do this on a monthly basis, but we've put in information, or excuse me, places for you to do that. Basic repair logs. Safety equipment should always be in perfect working order. The best way to verify that is to check it frequently and log your repairs. That way, if there's a chlorine leak and somebody's got to take the SCBA in there, you'll know that it's functioning. We've also put in place logs for water main repairs and service line repairs, and other types of equipment repairs. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to log water main and service line repairs. One of the harder things for a water system to do is to get a good idea of the condition of its pipes, because they're underground and we often can't see them. Past performance is one of the best indicators of future performance, particularly when it comes to pipe. If you log this kind of information and, more importantly, take this information and visualize it, i.e. put it on a map, and that could be something as simple as push pins on a wall, you will start to notice patterns in your breaks, which will help you effectively maintain your system and build capital improvement plans and do that sort of thing. Valve exercising is also a place I think that a lot of systems fall down on. It's one of those out of sight, out of mind things. You don't really need the valve to work until you have a break and you need to isolate a part of the system. And I've seen many, many systems that once they get to that position, go to try and turn a valve and it won't turn, and then they have to spend a bunch of time hunting, looking for the next valve to shut off that part of the system. We have put in logs here for mains exercising and for plant pump house valve exercising and for hydrant valve exercising, and scheduling for these is built into the monthly files. The idea is that for a small system, over the course of a year that all of the valves would get exercised. You could obviously extend that framework to a multi-year period if you've got a larger system, but it's an important thing to do, and the only way to figure out whether they work is to actually exercise them, and obviously you want to log that and never start a valve exercising program on a Friday because there will be breaks. And then finally, we've got a customer service log here. Dawn mentioned level of service at the very beginning. Knowing what your customers want, how you're reacting and responding to them, and being able to document that kind of information is very important. One of the best ways to do that is to talk to your customers. Your customers tend to call you when there are problems. You should note that. A lot of systems do a very, very good job of taking care of problems on the fly, but they do not do a very good job of documenting what they've done. And when you have a lot of customer service complaints about a particular issue, if you've documented both the fact that those complaints came in and how you dealt with them, or perhaps didn't because you didn't have the appropriate equipment or funding, having a log like this is very, very useful when you're going to your board members or to your ratepayers if you need to increase the rates for some reason. And this is very, very simple. This is based off an Excel spreadsheet. It was essentially just a time reported, the type of issue, who it is, what kind of action you took, and importantly, when you resolved the issue. Those time lags can be very, very important, because if you've got a level of service that says we're going to repair all reported leaks within 24 hours, you want to be able to document whether you've actually done that or not, because if you have, that's something that you can brag about to your customers. And then second to last, we've got a telephone threat list. Hopefully you will never have to use this, but occasionally people call and make threats to systems, and obviously in a situation like that, you want to have as much information about the call as you possibly can so that police or the appropriate authorities can potentially identify who it's from. An easy way to do that is to have a simple checklist like this, where whoever's getting the call while they're listening to the person ranting and raving can sort of check down the appropriate criteria about the caller's voice. In these days of caller ID, you might even actually be able to put their phone number down. Last but not least is an employee training log. This is an industry that requires ongoing training. You want to be able to budget for it, and you want to make sure that your folks are doing their training on a scheduled basis, so you don't sort of run to the end of a time period and realize one of your operators has to take 2 days off to go for a training because they need their hours. This is a simple way of keeping track of whether that's been done. The last document I'm going to show you here real quickly is the standalone customer complaint log. Sometimes the customer complaints and security threats come straight into an operator. Sometimes these happen when you're out walking down the street talking to or doing some work on the system, but quite often calls like this come into the city's main desk or the utility's main desk. So we've essentially created a duplicate log that you could give to a front-end receptionist, or perhaps your billing department, or other people that are sort of customer facing, so that they would be able to take down this information. And it's basically got a duplicate paste for the emergency information and your basic customer complaint and telephone checklist threat logs. So with that, that's sort of a brief overview of the document, and I realize that's very, very fast, but the guidebook is a very, very useful resource. It explains why all of the pieces are there and what they do. Now let me get back to my PowerPoint screen here and move forward. Alrighty. Whoops, technical difficulties, 1 second. My PowerPoint just crashed on me. Dawn, would you mind picking up? Hold on. Never mind. Sorry about this, folks. So we're going to go back to a couple of poll questions. Sorry about that. To sort of wrap things up, and then we will open up the floor for questions. Sorry that went a little bit longer than I expected, but we do have a few more minutes.
Yeah, I can launch our poll here. I'm going to go ahead and launch this first poll. If your system has a documented preventive maintenance plan, how do you formally track activities? And go ahead and select the best response here for your system. All activities are tracked in a database. Activities are tracked in a spreadsheet or similar document. You do the activities, but they aren't formally tracked. Or you don't track the activities. Looks like we're still waiting for a few more people to respond here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll and share the results with you. And great, looks like, wow, a lot of folks are tracking they're tracking their activities in a document or a spreadsheet, 43%. 9% are doing so, but in a database. 30% are doing those activities, but not formally tracking them. And 17 are not doing those activities, tracking the activities. Okay, now I think there's one more poll. We're going to just launch that poll for you now. For your maintenance, which format are you most likely to use? You can just select the following options: paper or interactive PDF. Looks like almost everyone has voted or participated. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll. And we have a pretty even split here. 56% are slightly more in favor of paper. 44 looking forward to using that interactive PDF. And then last.
Excellent. I'm glad we did it in both formats.
Great. And then so we have one more poll question correct. So we're going to go ahead and launch that. And this is an interesting question. Would a standalone tablet or smartphone application that covered and documented these tasks be of interest to you? So you can go ahead and select yes or no here. And we've got almost everybody participating. I'm just going to give you a couple more seconds and closing this poll now. Wow, overwhelming interest in the tablet or smartphone application. That's pretty neat. And I will let you guys get back to your questions now.
Okay, so I think we're going to open the floor up to the questions that have come in. Dawn has been viewing them as they go. So do you want to pick up here, Dawn, and throw out some questions and maybe we can answer them?
Sure, and I think the poll results are still showing. So if you would go ahead and close those for us, that'd be great. So one of the questions that came in is it possible to add wells for a system that has more than 6?
Yeah, that can be done. I would recommend you give us a ring. Like I said, those are fairly complicated forms. If you were to simply copy them and paste them, one of the things that Acrobat will do is copy the field names as well. So you potentially would end up with perhaps 7 wells, but your data from the 6th well would show up on the 7th page. So there's a little bit of tweaking that needs to be done. But yeah, that is doable. give us a ring. We could potentially walk you through it or maybe even be able to do it for you.
So why don't you go ahead and put our contact information up there
Yeah.
so people can make note of it.
Yes, indeedy, sorry.
And then
There
we
we go.
have, in just a minute, we'll show the location where you can download this again. It will also come to you in an email and will be part of our website. So if you've missed it, we'll give you a chance to see it here again in just a minute, and you will get it in an email. So don't feel like you're going to miss the opportunity. We will make sure that you have ample time to write that down, or just wait until you get the email. We have questions about, do you have to be connected to the web to access these documents?
No, you do not. It's a standalone PDF, so if you had, for example, a wireless-only tablet, as long as you've downloaded it before you go out in the field, all the functionality is available to you.
A question about, can you download the data for worksheets to other analytical tools?
It is not set up to do that, although you can do, if you've got a full version of Adobe Acrobat, you can do some exporting. You won't be able to do that with just the plain Adobe Reader. And that's why we did, on most of the monthly files, there are running totals for most of the fields so that it would sort of facilitate doing that sort of transfer if you had to do it manually.
Can the document be stored in the cloud for use by multiple computers?
Yes, you could do that. There's no reason you couldn't do that. Just
What
make
is
sure
the
everybody
cost?
saves.
Oh, sorry.
Just make sure everybody saves.
There you go. What is the cost for this document?
It is absolutely free. As your tax dollars at work, it's on the EPA website. I think everybody's had enough time to write down our contact information. So it is on the EPA website right here. The URL is up there on the left-hand side. But if you just Google EPA electronic preventive maintenance logs, it will take you to this page. And you can download it for free.
All right. We have lots of questions rolling in. I'm going to answer one more, and then I'll turn it back over. We've got a couple of closing polls for you to sign up for our blog. Any questions that we did not get to during the webinar, we will answer via email. So keep an eye out for an email coming. The question that there's lots of questions about, can this interact with other products, or can it work with our billing system or our work order system? So we will address those kind of individually. There's a question too about, how does this O&M product compare with EPA's CUPS product? This product is designed for you to track your maintenance. It is strictly about doing maintenance and the frequency of when you should be doing what. The CUPS product from EPA is an acronym for Checkup Program for Small Systems, and it is intended to help you get started with asset management planning. So it's looking at inventory, what do you own, what condition is it in, where is it located, what would it cost to replace it, which of those assets are critical. So they have two different intentions, but of course tracking your O&M, knowing what kind of maintenance you're doing, helps you answer a lot of the questions that come about as part of asset management. So the two should definitely work hand in hand. If you're already using CUPS, this tool would just help supplement where to go to get answers to a lot of those questions. So I think that's all the questions we have time for. Two more quick polling questions, and an evaluation will come to you here in the next just couple of seconds.
Great. Thank you so much, Dawn. The first order of business, I am sending out our evaluation. So please go ahead and take that survey. And then just to close everything up, we just want to ask you if you would like to subscribe to our blog. And if you do, please feel free to click yes. We will get you signed up. I'm just going to give you a couple more minutes to get settled on that. Great. And then lastly, Are you interested in receiving in-depth technical assistance? You can let us know now, and we will be sure to follow up with you. Okay. All right. And on that note, I will let our presenters add anything that they need to add, and we will close our webinar for today. Dawn, what do you think?
If you'll close this poll, we did get a comment that a good way to quickly copy this information is to just take a quick screenshot. So if you were concerned about having that web address, like I said, you'll get it in an email, but that's a great suggestion. Thanks for making it, Jacob. You can screenshot this and then you'll have that web address right there to be able to type in. So we'll leave this up for just another second, and thank you so much for attending today. Please reach out to us if you have any questions about using this document. We would be happy to help, and again, at no cost.
Thank you very much.